Welcome. Thank you for joining us on the Skirball's YouTube channel. My name is Sabrina Worf and I am the Skirball's membership manager. It is my pleasure to share with you the members-only Curator Talk for our Spring 2022 exhibition, Talking Back to Power, Projects by Aram Han Sifuentes. We are pleased to offer our members early viewing opportunities of temporary exhibitions in addition to rich content such as the talk you are about to hear. Members and donors make it possible for the Skirball to offer engaging and meaningful exhibitions and programs. Contributions and membership support sustain the Skirball's commitment to upholding timeless Jewish values by presenting arts and cultural programs and exhibitions that celebrate discovery and hope, foster human connections, and call upon us to help build a more just society. The talk you are about to hear was held in person on Member Preview Day, April 13, 2022. This video is first being released exclusively to Skirball members. We hope you will share it with your friends and family. Talking Back to Power, Projects by Aram Han Sifuentes, and its related educational programs at the Skirball Cultural Center are made possible by support from the following donors: the California Wellness Foundation, Billy and Steve Fisher, Korea Foundation, Alicia Mignana and Rob Lovelace, Soraya and Eunice Nazarian Family Foundation. We often hear the phrase, "it takes a village." Our Skirball village would not be complete without our members and donors. Thank you for your support, generosity, commitment, and active involvement. It is now my honor to introduce to you the speakers for today's talk. Laura Mart is curator of Talking Back to Power, Projects by Aram Han Sifuentes, and co-curator of I'll Have What She's Having, the Jewish Deli. At the Skirball, Mart has also curated the original exhibitions El Sueño Americano, The American Dream, photographs by Tom Kiefer, Another Promised Land, Anita Brenner's Mexico, and more. She served as managing curator for Star Trek, Exploring New Worlds, and Through a Different Lens, Stanley Kubrick photographs. She earned a BFA in Studio and Theater Arts from Washington University in St. Louis and an MA in Art History from the University of Chicago. Aram Han Sifuentes is a fiber and social practice artist, writer, and educator who works to center immigrant and disenfranchised communities. Her work often revolves around skill sharing, specifically sewing techniques, to create multi-ethnic and intergenerational sewing circles, which become a place for empowerment, subversion, and protest. Solo exhibitions of her work have been presented at the Jane Addams Hull House Museum, Chicago, Hyde Park Art Center, Chicago, Chicago Cultural Center, Chicago, Pulitzer Arts Foundation, St. Louis, MoCA Cleveland, and at the Skirball Cultural Center. Aram is a 2016 Smithsonian Artist Research Fellow, 2021 Three Arts Next Level Awardee, 2020 MAP Fund Grantee, and 2022 Craft Research Fund Artist Fellow at the Center of Craft. Her project, Protest Banner Lending Library, was a finalist for the Beazley Design Awards at the Design Museum, London, UK in 2016. She earned her BA in Art and Latin American Studies from the University of California, Berkeley, and her MFA in Fiber and Material Studies from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. She is currently an associate professor adjunct at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Now, please enjoy this exclusive member talk on Talking Back to Power.
We're so lucky to have Aram with us today. Aram is here with us from Chicago for the opening of her exhibit, Talking Back to Power, Projects by Aram Han Sifuentes, which she and I have been working on together for over 3 years. I first met Aram in 2019, and I really fell in love with her work. One of the things that I like the best about Aram's work is how collaborative and inclusive it is. Aram works with a wide range of collaborators, from students to her friends, her family, her mother even. And so the works that you'll see in the exhibition and that you're going to preview shortly, these are works that are the result of the work of many hands. So I hope we can get PowerPoint up soon. I think we'll just talk until we can get the PowerPoint up. One of the things that I like to start off with, because it's really what you see first when you come into the gallery, is a collaborative work that Aram made together with her mom, Young. And Aram and her mom share a lot, share art, but they also share more. And Aram, could you talk a bit about your relationship with your mom and the legacy that you share of art and immigration and protest?
My mother, actually, in South Korea, she was a trained traditional ink painter and an art educator. But when we moved to the United States in 1992, she couldn't continue to do art, right? Because it wasn't going to support her family. And so my parents, they didn't know what they would do for work here, but they ended up going into dry cleaning and opened up their own store, right? And so in the gallery, there's this piece that my mom, oh yeah, this piece, exactly. So there's this piece that my mom started actually in 1992. It's actually an underpainting, and it just stayed that way forever because at the dry cleaners, they would work like 12, 13 hours a day, 6 days a week. And so my mom just never had the ability to go back to making artwork, right? And so I actually grew up with this drawing inside my room, and I remember just always being in awe of it and always looking at it, and I wanted it in my room, right? So I would put it in my room, and I would just stare at it, ask my mom if she would ever finish it, and she would be like, I'm too busy, I just can't. And I just remember sitting there as a kid thinking, this is like the most beautiful thing I've seen, and just like also questioning, like, why do you work so hard when you can't even do the thing you love most, right? And so later, I think it was 2015 or 16, she actually wanted to throw it out. And I was like, absolutely not, right? And I was like, I think this is a good moment for you to finish it. And she was like, no, you finish it for me. And so this piece I encased in wax, and you'll see that in the exhibition.
So just talking a little bit about the technical aspect of the art making process for those of us who may not know, an underdrawing is like a preparatory sketch for an ink painting, and then do you do the painting on that piece, or is there a separate piece of paper? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it's like it goes under the piece, and then you lay a piece of rice paper on top of it, and then so you paint on top, on a different layer.
Yeah, so you'll often see in Korean ink painting and ink painting generally, like there are no pencil lines and it looks like magic, right? Like this drawing just appeared, this painting just appeared, this fluid, perfect thing. But there's so much preparation that goes into it. So instead of finishing it in a traditional way, like doing the painting, the final painting, I think it's so poetic that you chose to preserve it in this way. And when you see it in the gallery, you can see like the edges are worn with time, and you can kind of see a little bit of discoloration on the paper. And I think that really speaks to this idea of the passage of time. And I think it was your uncle said something to me. Aram's whole family came to our opening reception last night, and I was speaking with her uncle, and her uncle said something that really resonated with me, and I think it will resonate with you because it resonates with a concept that's shared in Jewish tradition, and it's the concept of something moving from generation to generation, or the phrase I learned, Lador Vador, I hope I said that right. And so this is something that it's intergenerational, and it's really powerful. To share that, to share something with your parents. I think I've had many of those on my own experiences with my mom recently, and I think that's something that we can all connect with. And so the next thing I want to talk about is amend. And so Amend is a piece that you started when you were in school, right? In 2011 or so. And can you tell us a bit about why you started this project, who you talked to, what the project is, and some of the immigrant stories that you learned as you were conducting these interviews?
Yeah, so Amen I started in 2011, and yeah, it really was maybe the first artwork really delving into my identity as this immigrant, right? And so my mom, she's always hemming jeans, right, as a seamstress. And in the living room, she's always doing that. And there's always sort of a pile of jean cuffs next to her. And so, and she would just throw those away, right? She might save some of the bigger pieces for scraps, for patches or something, but most of them she would just throw away. And so I started collecting those, just thinking they're really beautiful and seeing it as like, it would be so exciting to be able to use this in my art practice. And then I took a little bag of it to Chicago with me where I did my MFA. And I remember being like, I'm ready to like do things with this. And then I started to like create these sculptures out of them and sew them together. And there just wasn't enough, right? And so I was like, I'm gonna ask my mom to save them and ship them to me to Chicago. And a beautiful advisor that I had at the time was like, why would you do that? There's so many people here doing the same type of work, right? And so with that, I was like, yeah, you have a really great point, and I can really use this as sort of this catalyst to ask people who do the same type of work that my parents do and ask them questions, right? And so in Chicago, I started going to tailors and seamstresses and asking them for their jean cuffs. And so I visited 23 different seamstresses and tailors, and I just sort of went to the closest ones, like Yelp the closest ones, and walked over. And it was interesting because like 20 out of the 23 also were immigrants from South Korea. And you know, sharing these stories, I started to like ask them questions and write some of them down and sort of collect my own oral histories in this sort of way. And then for years, there were a few that I really connected with that would just save bags and bags for me. So I would go back during this 2 years to like go once a month and like help them do something. And then they would give me a whole bag of jean cuffs in exchange, and it was really sweet. And so with that, I created these sculptures and quilts. I call them quilts in the gallery that you'll see.
I love that so much, and I love the reciprocity in that of doing something in exchange for the donation of the materials, but also really honoring the stories that these people that you talked to shared with you. And one of the things that you'll see in the gallery when you see this piece, or if you've already seen it, are these hand-stitched excerpts of their personal narratives, things about their families, things about their health, things about the conditions that led to them moving to the United States. And there's also a chart that kind of chronicles in more kind of, you know, cold detail, right? Straight detail, I should say. The, you know, how long they've been in the US, how much they charge to hem a pair of jeans, and also really revealingly what they did in their home countries. Many people who come here, you know, whatever their reasons, they leave behind lives that they're quite different in their home countries. Some of these people working here in Chicago as seamstresses and tailors were bankers or stay-at-home moms with maids or teachers or clothing manufacturers. And so I think that really says a lot about how, you know, coming to a new country, facing a language barrier, maybe you have professional qualifications that just don't translate to a new country. And just like the incredible wealth of experience that immigrants from around the world bring and contribute to the U.S. And I think this piece is a really lovely place to talk about the connection between Aram's family's experience, the Korean-American experience of the people that you interviewed for Amend, and the Jewish experience. I'm sure many of you probably have family members or ancestors who worked in the garment industry. This is a really common place for people to work when they first arrive, because it doesn't necessarily require English language skills. It doesn't necessarily require technical training, but you can learn on the job, and it's a way for people to support, like food, right? Like the food businesses that immigrants start. It's a way for immigrants to support themselves, but it's also a place where low wages are prevalent, poor working conditions, all sorts of abuses, child labor, things that for decades immigrant activists have fought, probably I should say, for over a century. Immigrant activists have fought to improve. There's a rich history of this in the Jewish American history, with events like the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, which with many of you may be familiar. But this fight to improve conditions for workers, conditions for immigrants, is really central to the Jewish experience, and also really connects to the Skirball's mission of pursuing justice. So that's one of the reasons why I personally found Aram's work so moving and appealing, and also how I thought it would be a good fit for us here at the Skirball. So let's move on, and we're going to talk about Citizenship Test Sampler. Aren't these gorgeous? They're really fun. So we have a selection of 36 of these, but how many in total have been made?
There's over 130.
Yeah, wow. So these are samplers. Sampler meaning it's like an embroidered piece of fabric. Historically were used by young women dating back to even before the colonial period. But it was this idea of demonstrating your skills, right? Like domestic skills, embroidery skills, but also literacy. And this project is called U.S. Citizenship Test Sampler Project. And these are samplers that feature the questions and answers to the questions you have to answer on the naturalization test. And I was wondering, Aram, if you could talk a bit about your own process going through the naturalization test, what inspired this project, and then a little bit about how this project, where you run these workshops, how it helps people who are aspiring citizens or immigrants both, be able to take the test and maybe do some other things.
Yeah, so I started this project really for practical motivations. I wasn't a citizen and had to learn the test material. And when I really need to do things, I like to make it my art practice, because that's the only way that things will get done. And so I started sewing the citizenship test questions and answers as a way of studying them. And you'll see this long piece that I started, and I've ended on question 53, because I will continue to work on it, but it's very slow. And that's sort of a fun part, a side part of the project, is that I sew so slow that I actually can't digest the questions, right? So it actually doesn't help me at all. But but yeah, so with the collective and communal ways that I work, I wanted other non-citizens to be able to stitch these with me. And so these are what you're seeing here, where other non-citizens pick one question and answer of the citizenship test and then sew it. And then, so in a way, we start to use sewing as a way of studying together. And then each of these are on sale for the cost of applying for citizenship. So right now it's $725. And if it sells, the full amount goes to the maker of the sampler. And so I started this, for a lot of different reasons, right? I think number one is, this test is so difficult, right? And just really needing to study together is it's so difficult, it's so intimidating. And so using sewing as a way of studying together for it, right? And so that's one of the reasons I started this, but also to show the public how hard this test is, right? And it comes up every workshop that we have, is that people are like, wait, this test is so difficult, and a lot of people are really scared to take the test, right? My parents aren't citizens, and we've been here 30 years, and they don't want to take the citizenship test because they're really scared to take that test, right? And so like I said, yeah, that comes up every workshop. People are like, wait, why do I have to know who the president was during World War I to prove that I'm worthy of becoming a citizen, or what year the Constitution was written, right? It's like, studies show that more than 2 out of 3 Americans who are born with citizenship would actually fail the test, right? And so I also wanted to, put these on display to show people like how condescending this test is of the immigrant community. And obviously that you have to pay $725 is that having that extra money is quite difficult. It's a really high fee. And so being able to use art as a way of sort of, being able to help people with that fee, right? And so that's sort of how this project came about.
Yeah, I think this is a really powerful piece for that. There's just like showing that art can be not only something to look at, but also something that can do meaningful good. This is an idea that comes up when we talk about there's a kind of art, and Aram's practice falls into this category, but also many other categories. And that category is called social practice art. Some of you may have heard of this, and it's the idea that art isn't necessarily a physical object, but it's a process of bringing people together, of dialogue, of community, of coming up with some kind of tangible outcome that isn't necessarily just an aesthetic object, but also a relationship and maybe a development of knowledge. It's very tied to teaching and pedagogy. It's really tied to community organizing and activism. Mm-hmm. And this is something, one of the things that I find just, in Aram's work, just how much you walk the talk, Aram, with protest, with advocacy, with doing projects that bring people together for, like you said, skill sharing, and learning, but also being able to share vulnerable feelings, like being scared, and how difficult the test is. You also have to answer the questions out loud in English. So that just adds a whole extra layer of difficulty for people who are not necessarily fluent or confident in their English language skills. So I want to move on and talk about protest garment labs. So this is something, again, with this idea of collaboration and skill sharing, where Aram works with a variety of different people to develop these incredibly interesting garments that when they're worn closed, they look maybe sort of normal. I don't know if any of them look totally normal, but like sort of normal. But then they're opened and they say these amazing things inside. And so we have a trio of these on display in the gallery on mannequins, and then we have documentation of them being worn and performed and opened and revealing their slogans as well on the background. And I should note that the one on the yellow one that says "Challenge the Sun," that's one that you made for yourself, Aram. So Aram wears that in the video. You'll see her. But Aram, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how this project came to be and where it's going. So this is one of the newest bodies of work that's on display in the exhibition.
Yeah, it's called Protest Garment Lab. And right now we have, I think, about 20 different garments that I've made with, I think, 8 different artists and makers and collaborators. So this idea came about because you'll see the other work, I make a lot of protest banners, and something that comes up is when I would ask people about how they use these banners, they would talk a lot about safety, right? Because it's not always safe to like go to a protest holding a big sign, right? And so I was thinking about safety and thinking about how, like creating these garments that have protest banners and inside of them, that then you can open up these pockets or appendages, and then this transformation happens, right? And with that, it emboldens the person wearing it, and then you could put it away again, and you're safe again. And so I work with different collaborators, like I said, just sort of inventing these garments, right? And so on these 2 is worn by my drumming group, which is a all-women Korean traditional drumming group called Uri Sori. and where all members are all activists and organizers. And so we created these jackets that open up and say different slogans based on our own selves and the activism that we participate in. And you can see the other one is these zippers, right, that you unzip and then it unravels. And so you can see the video of how that gets activated. And then this one on the left is Andrea Ramirez, and she was really interested in like Cholo, Mexican-American fashion and how the history of it being sort of seen as being delinquent fashion. And she really wanted to, she was also interested in the sort of gender bending that happens in that fashion. And so she is inspired by cumbia lyrics that she put on the garment. And in the video, you can see her and her friend Victor dancing cumbia on the street as a way of protest. And so you can see these various garments in the video that we have in the installation.
I love that, and I love the power of all of these different creative forms of expression coming together in activism. You have visual arts, you have dance, you have music. The cumbia music as this style of music that's very popular, originated in Colombia, but very popular with Mexican-American communities, and the style, the rhythm comes from the rhythms of enslaved communities in South America. And so it has these really deep connections to protest, to resistance, to envisioning a better world where all people are welcome, which is really a major theme of this exhibition. So looking at the ways in which immigrants and people with other marginalized identities can create express their thoughts, their opinions, and can create spaces and claim spaces for themselves for belonging and for feeling welcome in a society where official means of welcome or of belonging are hard to come by, right? Like the idea of applying for citizenship and how difficult it is. And I want to end this lovely talk with Aram by talking about her project, Protest Banner Lending Library, which is really fun. I don't know if any of you had the chance to participate in our Protest Banner workshops during the summer of 2020, but we held virtual workshops over Zoom. This is one of the ways in which I'm super grateful to Aram for how flexible and adaptable she's been, as we were originally supposed to open the show in fall of 2020. And we've changed and pivoted and offered things online, and we worked with Aram to do the official and unofficial voting station online. But Protest Banner Lending Library is something that I think really connects with a lot of people because it's so fun and it's accessible, and it is, I think, incredibly relevant no matter what moment we find ourselves in. There's always a cause to champion. There's always work to be done in the pursuit of justice. And so, Aram, I was wondering if you could talk a bit about like how this project started. You were talking about safety with the garments, and what was the safety aspect of this? How does a fabric protest banner make somebody feel safe?
Good question, yeah. So Protest Banner Lending Library, I started this in 2016, where I say there's two parts. So teaching people how to make their own protest banners and these really easy quilting steps where actually no sewing is required. And you can make a banner, your first one, in like an hour and a half, depending on how long the slogan is. So if you pick no, you could be done in 30 minutes. Right? But so I teach people how to make their own protest banners, and then the second part is a lending library of them. And it really became this because, going back to that question of safety, as you could see, most of the people that I make art with for years are non-citizens, generally immigrants of color, right? And so when I started doing these workshops, there were a ton of protests happening, as you remember, in 2016. And I started this really as soon as the election happened, right? And so I was just inviting people to come and make these banners with me. And there was a moment where I was like, well, all these protests are happening. Who's going to take them out? Who can use these? Who wants to take them out? And the people in the room, the majority of them, didn't feel safe going out to protest. right? Because people were undocumented or non-citizens or had small children. And so also this question of this, that protests, right? We hear this, people talk about protests as like, we all need to go to the streets, and like fight back, which is very important, but we don't talk about it not being accessible or safe for vulnerable communities. And so it was interesting then, because then I was like, wait, why do we all, and I was included at that time. I was not a citizen, and my child was 1 year old at the time. So I also was like, I made these, but I too can't go out there, right? And so then I was thinking through that and how the people in the room really wanted these to go out into the world and be used. It was like, these are our voices and they need to be out in there, in the world for people to see. But we maybe can't take it out ourselves. So thinking through that, I was like, well, if I make it a library, then, they could get donated to the library, and then people who need banners can come check them out. And it was sort of happening naturally because I was making a bunch of banners and being like, who wants to take them? And they went very quick. Right? People were like, I'm going to a protest, I'll pick it up tomorrow, right? And so then this idea came about creating a protest banner lending library from this project.
And so we have the protest banner lending library in the exhibition. It is functioning as a lending library. You can check out a banner if you'd like. You can also attend one of our workshops. The first one will be on April 28th. Create your own banner. If you want to be done quickly, just say no. Or yes, for that matter,
yes, yeah.
Or any other short word. So I just want to touch on one more thing here, which is this idea of like who can participate, and the idea of the concept of allyship, of saying, okay, well, I am able to go out. I'm not at risk in the same way, like like you said, undocumented folks who could be at risk of deportation, like people with young children who wouldn't have childcare if they got arrested, or people who are disabled and being arrested would put them in physical harm, really unpleasant physical situations. So. This is a really important thing, that we share our abilities, we share our resources, we share our voices with one another. And so I want to encourage all of you, no matter what your viewpoints may be, similar, different, to take this to heart and to really think about how you build your community, and how you pursue justice with your community, how you share with your community, and how you connect with your community. One of the things that I love the most about Aram's work is just how joyful and playful and inclusive it is in bringing people together in this very literal way. And so I hope you'll spend some time in the exhibition, really look, enjoy. I want to mention there's another pop-up exhibition, or pop-up installation of Aram's work, I should say, in our permanent collection galleries that draws connections between Aram's family's story, the immigrant garment worker experience that was part of her childhood and her life, and cited in the Liberty Gallery to connect with the Jewish American experience of working in the garment industry and fighting, similar causes for better conditions for marginalized people, for better conditions for immigrants, for better conditions for women, for LGBTQ folks, for people of all marginalized identities. The fight for justice, justice is something that needs to actively be pursued. You don't just achieve it by doing nothing. So I hope that all of you will take that away from this exhibition and really enjoy your visit with us today. Thank you so much for being Skirball members, and thank you for coming.
Many thanks to our speakers, Laura and Aram, for offering their insights into the exhibition, Talking Back to Power. Their enlightening conversation prompts meaningful examination of the American cultural experience through an inclusive and engaging lens. Members, donors, and friends, we look forward to welcoming you and your friends and family to the Skirball for a full slate of ever-changing exhibitions and programs, including talks, concerts, films, and more. There is something for everyone at the Skirball. We offer enriching content year-round. Members, we hope you are receiving Skirball e-News. If you ever need to update your email or mailing address with us, please send an email to membership@skirball.org. To learn more about the Skirball Cultural Center and our current offerings, including exhibitions and programs, please visit www.skirball.org or refer to the Skirball Program Guide, which we mail to members. You can always find the most recent program guide on our website. Simply click on the Calendar tab on our homepage. If you are not yet a member, you can register to receive Skirball e-news. Visit our website at www.skirball.org and click on Get e-news on the right side of the navigation bar at the top of our homepage. We hope everyone watching enjoyed learning about Talking Back to Power, projects by Aram Han Sifuentes. If you have not yet visited the exhibition or would like to see it again, it is on view at the Skirball through September 4th.